When we're so in the water and around other high performers, and it is a high performance world, it's a high performance company, everyone is moving fast and furious, no one is embodied, everyone is dysregulated. Yeah. It's just it's like I don't even know what peace looks like anymore, and possibly never even did.
This is On Coaching, a show from the Beyond High Performance podcast brought to you by the Meta Performance Institute for Coaching and Novus Global. I'm Joseph Thompson, Vice President of Innovation at the Meta Performance Institute. In On Coaching, we pull back the curtain on the craft by interviewing some of the most successful and accomplished executive and transformational coaches practicing today. You'll catch coaching tips and tricks and real-time learnings from some of the world's best coaches, along with a passion for this craft that we've dedicated our lives to. We talk shop, we share the unfiltered realities, and explore how the best keep growing to help others go beyond high performance. In today's episode, we explore what happens when high performance meets the human nervous system. Host and co-founder of the Meta Performance Institute, Amanda Jaggard, is joined by executive coaches Jean-Marie Jobs and Leila Entezam for a conversation that moves from neuroscience to leadership, from achievement to embodiment. Together, they discuss the wiring behind drive, the cost of constant motion, and the path toward a healthier form of excellence, one that honors both brain and body.
What does it take to become a world-class coach? It starts with Foundations, a 5-month intensive training program designed to elevate your coaching mastery. Whether you're an aspiring coach or a veteran seeking their next level, Foundations will challenge, inspire, and change your life. But taking this step is personal. Our enrollment advisors are ready to guide you with curiosity, expertise, and clarity to making an empowered decision for your future. Let's find out together what you are capable of. Visit mp.institute/foundations to speak with an enrollment advisor today.
Hello, everyone. I am Amanda Jaggard, and I am thrilled today to welcome Jean-Marie Jobs and Leila Entezam to a conversation that I have been looking forward to so much, and around a topic that I think comes up so often for us as coaches and leaders, and that's the intersection of neuroscience, human performance, our nervous system, how we show up as leaders and coaches in the coaching space. So welcome, Leila. So nice to have you here. And welcome, Jean-Marie.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And both of you bring such an expertise. And so I'm really excited to get to learn from you all today. So to kick us off, I'd love to hear briefly from each of you what led you to this space and really getting into the intersection of coaching and the fascination with the brain. So which came first? Was it the brain or coaching the brain? And how did one lead to the other?
Jean-Marie, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I think mine was probably the brain. I'm just that person that likes to know how things work and really understanding my own trauma in a way and sorting through, teasing apart family dynamics and patterns and moving from what I would call just a lot of dysfunction into a more healthy space and choice world and just rearranging patterns. And so when I was introduced to training and coaching, it seemed like a natural connect point to invite people into different perspectives, frames, mindsets as they navigate the challenges and the reality of life, and how can we become the person that we believe we're created to be instead of this default version that is stuck in unresourceful patterning.
Thank you. Leila?
That's amazing, Jean. This question of how'd you get to do what you're doing never has this standard answer, like I'm an engineer or a teacher or something like that. Mine is definitely the brain. And I think I majored in it in undergrad before I even really understood what it was. And then I transitioned into the business world. Something was always missing. I got another master's in psychology and became a licensed clinician and spent thousands of hours in training, not to practice, but to understand human behavior at a deep, fundamental, in the trenches level. it was just sort of one thing led to another that kept piling those onto each other of the neuroscience and then the leadership and performance space and then the human behavior space from a psychology perspective and then working with executives and then coaching high performers. And I think that high performance piece has always been in my repertoire. My brother was the first high performer I knew, and seeing like the gift and curse that was. And so that domino effect has led me to being a neuro-emotional performance coach for high performers today.
Amazing. I think for me, I probably came in from the coaching, human development space and coaching. And then I think through Jean-Marie, I connect a lot with you, like through my own stuff and my own history and needing to learn it for myself to heal my, like to move forward in myself, and then seeing how that played in with coaching. It's like, oh, I'm not the only one who is dealing with this stuff. Interesting. And Leila, I love that you bring up the idea of high performers, because that's really how we want to frame this conversation today. Really in the context of a lot of our listeners are people who would self-identify as high performers, achievers, love to win, driven. I probably would have identified as a high performer earlier, and now I feel like I'm a recovering high performer. So hi, my name's Amanda, recovering high performer. But I think a lot of that is due to this work and what I have learned about this within myself. So to kick us off around I'd love to just throw out the idea of nature versus nurture. That comes up. So when we're looking even at high performers, is that a nature thing? Is that a nurture thing? And then how high performers show up and interact from a neurobiology, how much of it is nature and how much of it is nurture?
Go ahead, Leila. That sounds like it's right in your sweet spot.
So we could have a whole podcast just about that. I subscribe to the nature nurture combination model. There's, in my experience, a part of it that is just genetic and innate, and then how much that is fostered or hindered certainly is affected by your environment. But the parts where there is a lot of it that is innate in them that isn't in their own control. And I think in a lot of ways, that's part of what's given me compassion and empathy for this population, in the sense that the way that they drive, the way that they pursue things, the way that, your own brain is your only frame of reference. And so the only way they know to see the world and move through the world is in that way, not having the understanding of, and that's not how everybody else operates. And so the isolation that can create, the dissonance and the friction that can create with navigating through space. And now imagine this is happening to you from birth until adulthood. And so how long before you catch up to understanding that? Was that fostered or not? What effect did that have? What trajectory did you take based on it? And so that, sort of bleeds in a lot of these other complications.
Yeah, interesting. I just working with people all over the place. I think there's this element, I would definitely plus one to what you said. And I think there's this other element that there's an interpretation that's happening. There's a meaning making that's happening. And people can grow up in the same or very similar circumstances or nurture environments and come out with radically different stories about it and about who they are in the midst of it. So I find it really interesting. I don't know what trips that trigger. When I'm working with a group of people in an underserved population in a different country, then I see like a pattern of people just perpetuating much of a survival mindset and way of operating. And then there's that one person that's like, nope, I see something different here. And I am really captivated by what's that thing that where did you get that? What are you seeing? And so I think that it's a mixture. And then there's this mystery piece of it that I love.
And I think what's interesting is if you asked that one person, they couldn't explain it to you.
Nope.
Oftentimes because they don't see it as a distinction.
No.
When I talk to high performers and if you're asking like, why did you do this thing, or why do you see this in a certain way? I don't know. It's just the way like that. It's not an option. This is the
How
only
it occurs
way.
to me. Yeah, that's right.
Is there a piece of, because like I'm going to be selfish in some of this, if that's okay, since I have two experts on the call here, right here. Like I think that probably I was born with tendencies towards that, and then there were certain things in my environment where achieving, performing was kind of survival. It's what I needed to do to please those around me, to earn the gold stars, and so I think then when there was maybe some negative things that unfolded from showing up that way in the world, there was some maybe nurturing of myself. So I think it's been a journey of even coming back, like what is my true nature and how do I live that in a healthy way? How, like Leila, like what are some of the things, like when we are born with some of those natural tendencies, what is the nurturing that's really great, and what maybe is some of the nurturing that isn't so great?
So I think it's twofold. Nurturing of the skill set and the performance level is to continue to challenge them, put them in environments that do push them so that they can exercise that. And otherwise, to be around the average person, for them, because of that dissonance, is a struggle. They get bored. Out of that boredom, they'll act out. This is in younger years, maladaptive coping, things like that. And so continuing to put them in environments that challenge them. On the emotional side, a lot of times what happens is, well, that performance side, positive feedback and accolades and things like that, and that they often don't have the same level of emotion regulation and emotion development. And so but you're validated for the cognitive development, so that becomes less developed. And so giving them experiences and challenges that continue to grow their EQ as much as their IQ. So they don't end up on my doorstep where now we're working to bridge the gap between EQ and IQ decades later.
Yeah, that's probably where I think the tendency, or like the skills that I gained and having the mindset, it's like to override maybe what my body was saying and to just push through. To be super, super strong, to conquer anything. Like there is like this drive that eventually kind of got me into a place that wasn't so good for me. And so it is, tell me more about like what, and Jean Marie too, like what are some of those high performers, like where do they find themselves where it's like, this is maybe not the place that we know what the wins are to showing up that way. What might be some of the costs that when we're not tuned in to what our brain is doing, what our body is doing, that might get in our way?
Well, if I could tag on something to what you said real quick, I apologize, Jean Marie, is that what happens is, as a high performer, even when you don't know that that's what you are, you're used to succeeding at things. But when your emotional development isn't as advanced and your emotional maturity isn't as advanced, your emotional regulation, your EQ, your ability to understand your own feelings and other people's, then you don't perform as well in that space. And now suddenly, if you try to dabble in that space, then let's say, for example, you have a short temper. So you try to dabble in that space and you don't see the same positive feedback loop. You're not as good at it. And so what do? You revert back to reinforcing that cognitive skill set that you are good at. So what does that do? That continues to widen the gap between the two. So to your question about what are some of the consequences of that, is one of them is that it's that reinforcement of keep working on this part, which keeps increasing the gap between the other part. But as you continue to move up in the world and leadership in whatever space, the differentiator is less and less your cognitive abilities, because you get to places where that already proved itself. Now it's more about the reading of the room, the attunement to self, the attunement to other. In particular, when you start to get to places where you need to inspire and influence other people.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think part of what happens is that when you're working on that one skill set, that it's usually, as children, when they're high performing, they're in some ways not really attended to because, they're fine. They're fine. They're doing a good job from a parental mindset often. And children, then as adults, learn what I like to call aggressive independence, where they are just doing the thing. Like, I just pull myself up from my bootstraps. I don't need anybody, whatever, this is fine. And that furthers the gap that, Leila, you were addressing, because if you are creating your own isolation and you've told yourself you don't need anyone, well, you're not going to create spaces where you ask for what you need, where you're vulnerable, where you expose yourself, because it won't occur to you, or it might even seem like a problem or a threat. And then that's going to continue to widen the gap. And then I think part of it that creates the cycle is I don't believe humans are designed to live in that type of isolation. So then it becomes almost like a desperate survival, anxiety-producing experience internally, where there's just never enough. What did you do? You achieved that. Okay, now what? Now what? And there's no rest. There's no acknowledgement. There's no celebration. It's just like you are on to the next thing, going 1,000 miles an hour, like literally afraid of taking a breath.
And to your point about the wiring, so our brains are designed to be social. And so now what happens is it's I've achieved everything, the affluence, the accolades, the degrees, the whatever it is, but still there is this gnawing emptiness.
Yeah.
And I know there's something there. I may not have the language to describe or to sort of label what it is, but there's something that's missing no matter what I achieve.
Yeah, and we talk with our clients about that often at Novus. It's like there's this scenario that even when you win, you lose, right? Like, I'm crushing it. I'm the CEO. I've made, $150 million. No one in my family speaks to me. My kids are, separated from me. Like, there's all of these other pieces that you actually lost. That's not a win. And you won a thing, but you're losing this other whole segment of your world that I would wager is more important in the bigger picture.
But I think one of the things that's important to point out is that I have a deep understanding for why they struggle to find resources, because so often they will try therapy, a coach, a program, a something, but their brain processes information more quickly. Yep. They show up to those settings, and so they don't feel seen, they don't feel understood. They're 10 steps ahead of whoever's supposed to be teaching or supporting or therapying them or whatever. So they get bored, they check out, and they say, this is stupid, I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the being in settings where their uniqueness is understood is that critical differentiator for getting them the kind of support that they seek.
Yeah, and I think that also would come out of a desire for something new. Like a vision, something that's compelling. Because otherwise, there is a level of, hey, if it's, broken, there's nothing to fix.
It's working.
So it's working, basically. So that, to me, is the other lever there of what is it working? Do you have a vision? Do you have something that you see possible, another picture of the future? Or is this it? And because if this is it and you're good, then, hey, great, carry on.
I find the significant question to be that, are you at peace? Do you just have that internal calm or not?
I love that.
I've asked that. It's like, what do you mean by peace? It's like when a doctor says you need to take it easy. I'm like, define that actually. What does... I don't understand. You're speaking a foreign language. Take it easy. You need to lay that out specifically for me. Because I think when we're so in the water and around other high performers, and it is a high performance world, it's a high performance company. Everyone is moving fast and furious. No one is embodied. Everyone is dysregulated. Yeah. That is just I don't even know what peace looks like anymore, and possibly never even did, so it becomes a whole new concept even.
Well, I think it's one of the things that's critical there is understanding that a high performer's definition of balance looks different than everyone else's, and honoring that. So one of the examples I use in my book is, for example, a high-performing executive male, and there's a birthday party for their children. And the wife says, okay, I need you to be here and be at the party 2:00. And all of a sudden, he's got this critical insight or solution to a problem that comes to him or whatever. And if you try to force him to say, no, I said 2:00 and you need to be here at 2, as opposed to if you just gave him that 10 minutes to, map that out or something, get some of that processed. If you don't, he's going to spend most of his bandwidth at the party not being able to be present anyway because he has to get that thought process out, as opposed to if you give him the space to say, listen, I understand your brain works differently, but I'm going to give it some kind of a boundary. You've got 10 minutes to brain dump whatever you need to, and then you need to show up to the party. You're going to get a lot more present of a high performer than you are if you tried to jam them into, I said 2, the party starts at 2, and that's, it is what it is. And again, it's not excusing behavior, it's understanding it and then trying to work within it, by each party sort of negotiating a little bit.
Would that be some practical tips for people in how to manage the drive and what their brain is doing and commitments and vision to other stakeholders in their life?
I think that's part of it's not a black and white. So for example, he has to learn emotion regulation so that, hey, 10 minutes is all you get and work with that. I'm using this she example. She has to say, okay, give him the space. And, if he's 10 minutes late, I'd rather have him solid the next, 2 hours after that. They have to learn the effective communication in order to have that conversation. So it's multiple pieces to that puzzle. But essentially, that's the vision you hope to create as a result of those tools.
Love that. And I think creating the clear agreements with those other stakeholders, like the conversation between two partners saying, this is what I need, would you be willing to be here at the birthday party, at 5 p.m.? Yes, I'm committed. And, I'm going to spend 10 minutes and almost both wanting to support each other in what it is, what that vision is, which means this person wins and this person wins. So there is that conversation and the aligned agreement, I guess.
Let's be honest, coaching is booming, and so is mediocrity. If your calendar's full but your bank account isn't, if you're undercharging, overgiving, and secretly hoping someone discovers you online, it's time to stop pretending. The Premium Coach Roadmap is a 5-day email course from the Meta Performance Institute that exposes the 5 mistakes turning good coaches into forgettable ones and how to flip that game entirely. Want dream clients who pay what you're worth? Go to mp.institute/premium coach to sign up today.
Do you have any more, what would be some other practical tips, high performers? And I guess I talk to a lot of my clients and they've been high performing for a really long time. And it's not necessarily that they're burned out, as though some of them are. But I do think that they reach this point where it's I don't want to do this. It's not working, Jean Marie, to what you were saying. Mm-hmm. I think one of my questions is what is actually happening in our brain and our body when we get to that point, and what are practical tips to move into another way of being?
Do you want to start, Jean Marie?
I think for me, what I've learned as a definitely recovering high performer is to slow down and pay attention to my physical body. I recognize that I grew up with abuse in my background, so I learned very early on to just disconnect from my body because that was a good plan. And I'm still here. Yay. And what I learned, went through a bout of breast cancer 3 years ago. And what I learned in that process, which was incredibly helpful, was to reconnect to my body. I wasn't paying attention. And I was just doing everything I was doing and traveling and working and, essentially dragging my body around with me without any awareness, any listening, any check-ins. And my brain
Jean
would
Marie,
continually
you do this
override.
work for a living.
I know, right? I was just as fine. I'm reframing. I was all the
That's
things,
right.
all my cognitive skills that were working against me in ways that I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I thought, okay, I disconnected a long time ago, and I never reconnected. It never occurred to me. And so that was really a beautiful process for me of Okay, all right, body, you get a vote too. What do you need? Where are
What did
you
that
at?
process look like for you?
Honestly, it started out awkwardly, me just talking to my body because I was like, I don't know. But so I would ask myself a question, and then whatever came into my mind, I would just do it without like categorizing it. Like if I'm going through chemo and I'm like, God, I feel so tired. Normally I'd be like, you're fine. It's 4 p.m. You're going to be asleep in 4 hours, meh. I'm like, okay, stop. What do you need? And I'm like, I need to take a nap. And instead of judging that I needed to take a nap, rationalizing that I was going to bed anyhow in a little bit, like all the things, I just stop and take a nap. And just like basic slowing it down, checking in. So that's really how it started. And then paying so much more attention to nutrition, sleep patterns, restoration, routines, grounding in the morning, like all of the pieces that create space for my physical body to also be heard. It was a really intense, focused process because there had been, 60 years of doing something different.
Yeah. What were the beliefs that needed to change for you? What were the mindset shifts? Like, how did you begin to think differently about yourself and performance and all of that?
In my experience, a lot of performance is driven underneath by some sense of shame, like wanting to make up for something, prove something. I don't know. And I think that was definitely true. So that rewiring, exploring those beliefs, and without the judgment. Like to me, like if you can explore without judgment, that's 90% of the game because the judger is so strong and loud. It's just like, okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, yeah, all right. And really holding everything lightly and having, with that level of self-compassion to pay attention to context. Hey, you made the best choice you saw possible in those moments. Now this is a new context. Can you be present with what's happening right now and make a new choice and explore my own resistance and my own strategies that are just like automatic, go do the thing. It was, and still is. Obviously, it's a lifelong journey of continuing to learn and listen in ways that are underneath the exterior.
Leila, Jean Marie brings up the concept of shame, which I feel like is really prevalent in high-performing cultures world. Like there is this fear of failure, like these beliefs that go into it. And the work that you do, how much does that come up? And what do you do in working with people through those, like the different beliefs or the shame? What happens in our body when that comes up? Like what does that look like for you in your work?
I think shame is definitely there for a lot of people. They may not know it's called shame. Shame is a very taxing brain state.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean taxing brain state?
It's very heavy for your brain. To feel shame is very sort of inhibiting. And so it costs you a lot to be in a shame state. It's hard to move forward from, it's hard to recover from, hard to grow from. And
like it takes more brain energy to be in shame. Like it uses our brain.
It's a bigger hill to climb to change a behavior from a place of shame than it is from a place of motivation or inspiration or positivity. And so if I'm doing a thing because I'm ashamed, as opposed to if I'm doing a thing because I'm inspired, doing it because I'm ashamed is more work, harder, more emotional bandwidth than it is if I did it because I was inspired and motivated.
I think a lot of I think people think that the shame actually is like a super big motivator. Like I'm more motivated by shame than by the inspiration.
It may create a bigger driver because you want to, essentially, if it triggers a survival mechanism.
Right.
Yeah.
So it may have a bigger driver, but it's more work to accomplish that drive. And so if you think about if I'm in a positive brain state and I'm excited, I'm inspired, I'm whatever, and I can push from there, as opposed to if I'm ashamed or if I feel threatened or if I have the drive, it's just the work to, both of them have a drive to them, but which one is a bigger hill to climb to achieve that? So if you're afraid of something as opposed to if you're excited about something. And so that, and I think that also touches on what Jean Marie was talking about in terms of somatic awareness, that there's this whole other language. I think, part of your question, Amanda, was, what do you like, what do you teach people? What do you do with that?
Yeah, practical.
There's a whole other language. Emotions are the way that your body communicates. Your somatic awareness is the way that your body communicates. It uses entirely different brain regions. And so increasing the fluency in that somatic awareness so that, hey, if I can't quite label the thought or label the emotion, but can I at least tune into what am I physically feeling and then translate that into these other areas. I think sort of a tangent, but one that I have found matters increasingly is that we're now in this generation where there are these conversations about not pushing too hard or coddling or being sensitive to, and so now it's this balance between, so should I overindulge everything, and if I just feel like not working today, I'm just not going to work today because I just feel like it, or but then, hey, as a high performer, that doesn't really resonate, but grinding myself to the bone isn't right for me, but I don't want to look like what, that this generation is too soft. And so what are the associations they have with these ideas about slowing down, about, listening to what they need, and how do you help them define it in a way that isn't about the, some of the stereotypes that come with some of that language today, in some conversations around, for example, like as a coddling, as opposed to, hey, you don't have to go that far. That doesn't have to be you, but you still have these needs where you're out of balance for your version of balance. And how do you understand, defining what that looks like for you?
I felt that as a parent. I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. And so I knew how I was raised, which is like within what I knew, but I knew that I didn't want to give that to them. It was this tension of like, but I don't want to like coddle. But this is what I was so used. Like I remember even reading the Tiger Mom book when like they were really little, which was not a good idea for me to read because it just like reinforced things that didn't necessarily weren't ways that I wanted to continue. But it was like this constant tension as a parent because my high performer brain is like, no, you need to go, you need to suck it up, you need to do the thing. And I could like hear older voices in my life saying those things, but wanting something so different for my kids. Like, what if they could learn to aspire and achieve and dream and still know how to listen to their body? But it was like one time, this was during COVID, so it was a different time. My oldest, he was maybe, 15 or 16, and he's like, Mom, I need 6 hours of downtime every day. I was like, you do not. You don't. And like, nope. But it was like, it was just like this difference of, oh, you think really differently than I do around this stuff. And then there was like a fear that they wouldn't turn into high performers because I think that I still feel like that's the gold standard of what we want our humans to be. So I don't know, as a parent, managing that tension has been a lot for me.
Well, I think, as I'm listening, it just sounds like, we're like swinging between some pretty strong polarities, right? And there's not much middle piece. We're like, it's either this, or oh my gosh, it's going to be this. And there's that also occurs to me. And like, there's a fear or I'm sure what I don't want. I don't exactly know what I do want looks like, but I know what I don't want. And it like so creates that switch, that big swing. Is challenging.
That's so true. I feel like me that way as a parent and not knowing what is going to unfold for them, which they're like figuring it out in a really fascinating way. So I kind of just watch them like, wow, that's neat. What is that like?
Didn't see that coming.
That's right. But you're right, like where it's like, I know, drive, or the other option is just laissez-faire, whatever, like I don't feel good, so I'm not going in to do that presentation, not feel good, but like I don't feel like it. So, and mental health days matter. And when serious stuff is going on for me, like when serious stuff has been going on for my life, that like learning how to say no and learning to know my own limits and to care for myself and to pay attention to what do I need? What does my body, like it was a game changer for me in how I was showing up in the world. Leila, what are some other practical tips when you're with your clients, like even the somatic work? What does that look like?
So emotional intelligence is awareness of self and other. And so you can start with that self-awareness. And that self-awareness, it can be journaling. It can be, in that somatic awareness, it can be body scans. It can be things that allow you to experience awe in nature and whatever, in painting and gardening. It can be anything where something that's allowing you to slow down, to be present. The second you say meditation, a lot of times, my experience, they freak out. Oh God, I can't do that. I can't, whatever. But it's the association that, gardening can be your meditation. The point is what slows you down to get you centered and focused. And so I think giving that, be willing to be out of the box, to be lenient, to work with them, to say, it's not just this. And the things that allow you to engage, again, different brain parts. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it is experiential activities. What are the things that allow you to touch these other parts of you? And in particular, these other parts of you that are not the things that you're always used to thriving at, so that you can have rejection and humility and
play like
of your
kid.
Breaking of your ego, and even in play, but even if it's not in play, the willingness to do a thing that you're not good at because you're so used to being good at everything.
Sometimes I'll have, like, you write with your non-dominant hand, and it's so fascinating, the story that all of the inner conversation that comes up when we do that. And I find, one, it is frustrating, but like how I'm talking to myself, and like I'm not good at it. I'm probably never going to be good at it. I don't care about getting good at it. And it's just like, and it's okay. Like, it's okay to write that way. And I feel like that's a good, almost like spiritual practice or something like that.
Yeah, I think one of the other challenges is that, a lot of times any other arena you touch, if it's an investment, if it's a physical program, whatever it is, the ROI is much more visible, tangible, clear, definable. Whereas in this space, it is, hey, how long is this going to take? And what's it going to look like? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. And it doesn't have a clear, in 30 days we'll be here, and in 60 days we'll be here. And this is what it will look like. There's none of that. And so, it is so individual. And that's really hard for a lot of people to digest, in particular for high performers that are like, hey, tell me what to do. I'm going to knock it out of the park. I'll be the best at it. There is no version of that here.
There's no syllabus to get an A when it comes to this stuff. Dang it.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times, how often my clients will say, well, what's the homework? It's no homework. Well, but I have to, what's the thing I have to have done? There's none of that. We won't have that this week. Like it's a week where we don't have homework, or we don't, and I'll do that on purpose. No homework this week. No agenda today in today's conversation. We're just going to kind of see what comes up. And we do it on purpose just to let them sit in that discomfort so that we can navigate that together.
Yeah, so good. I was thinking that, Amanda, when you were talking just about expectations, and when in high performance mode, like there is an expectation that I should be excellent at something the first time I do it, even if I've never done it before. And that needs to be the case.
Yeah.
As if it's so, when you say it out loud, it just sounds ridiculous, but that is so much of the internal story. Like, I can't believe I didn't, well, have you ever done it before? I have a client that is CHRO for a huge company, and she's never done that before in this industry. And I had lunch with her a couple months ago, and I'm like, how are you doing? She goes, I just feel like I'm failing every day. I go, oh, that's called learning. She was like, shut up. Right? It's so dissonant to what we're used to when we're in the mode, So yeah, I love it. And I love doing things that are, for me, like getting into more physical. Like I take pictures of glimmers when I take my walks, and I pay attention to that. I take dance classes because I'm learning choreography I've never learned before. And I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing. And I was like, this is great. This is me learning. I am now learning. Yeah. So
I worked with a coach one time, and she talked about the distinction between self-care needs and self-care wants. So to make a list of those. So self-care needs, going to the dentist, going to the doctor when something is wrong, brushing my teeth, those types of things, like self-care needs. And then the self-care wants and getting really specific on that can be as small as I really like wearing fuzzy socks around the house, or lighting a candle, or drinking some tea, or having a really cute mug that's my favorite, or watching a stand-up comic as I'm doing that. Like there's the self-care wants that are just these like kindnesses to ourselves. And I think when I'm in my high performance space, I'm not very nice to myself. I'm not talking nice to myself. I'm not treating myself very kindly. And so even cultivating that kindness, like, oh, love, and how to talk to myself or how I'm treating myself, I think, because there is the high performance. We've been talking a lot about that. And then at Novus Global, where we talk about meta performance, I think when we're exploring this idea of what it is that we're capable of, we can sometimes show up to that like a high performer. So all of those high performer, like the feelings, the anxiety, the tension, if I didn't do it perfect the first time, then I failed. And that comes pretty quickly where people are like, I don't like this. Like, I wouldn't like it either. That doesn't look very fun. But I think like a lot of the things that you all are talking about is really cultivating how to really show up in what it is that you're capable of, not just being the best at whatever, but really that transformation and doing really cool stuff in the world.
Yeah, I think there's another element to self-care when you were talking, that there's like an emotional component, which can for me connects with how am I holding other people? Like, am I harboring a lot of like bitterness and anxiety and frustration and judgment? Like, when I'm doing that does take also a lot. It's expensive energetically, right, and emotionally. And I'm continually bringing the past back into the present, which there's no solve for that because it's already happened. So like that ability to release like the judgment, the hurt, the whatever, the pain in a healthy way, like being honest about it and releasing it both, I think is a huge part of self-care that often gets overlooked. So, sometimes I'm like, hey, you can take a bubble bath bitter and you're not going to feel better. It's just not good. Sorry.
One of the things I try to tune into is, do I feel sort of electrically charged is the only way I can describe it. Like, does my nervous system feel charged, not in a excited way, but in a like anxious way? And so when I can tune into my body and I recognize that, then I look for, okay, I'm off center. And so what are the things I need to do to bring me back down? And so for me, it's things like, I'm hypersensitive to my physical environment. And so, what's my physical environment like? Am I in too much noise, whether that's environmental noise, internal noise, whatever it is? Like, what needs to get quiet? Nature is my happy place. So it's like I always tell people, hey, if I'm, in a bad mood, just shove me outside. And so do I need to get outside? And so learning what are the things that will bring me back to center. First, learning what charge feels like, and then what are the things that bring me back to center.
And even what center feels like, because I think there have been seasons where that was so far removed. Like I needed to actually define center and then know what it feels like to get away from it so that I know how even to begin to come back to it. How do you help people find their center?
I follow a feeling path. And so it's tune into, you have to start with increasing the fluency of the language with your physical sensations, with your emotions, growing the sense that those things are safe to do. And then from there, tune into, okay, well, what does this one feel like? What does that one feel like? Is this more, charged in a positive way, charged in a more anxious way? And so follow the feeling.
As we begin to close here, I would love to hear from each of you, like a final thought, a final gift to our audience of high performers. What is like the one thing that you would want to say to them?
I think for me, it would, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say for me, it would be they often sit in these influential positions where the more they thrive and maximize their potential and find health and find balance, the more the domino of the lives they touch and those lives are enhanced. So it's an outsized impact. And so the doing that work, not just for themselves, but for the fact that they have that domino effect. And so they deserve it. They're worth it. They should have it. And they have this greater responsibility and opportunity because of the positions that they sit in and the gift that they were given.
That's great. Thank you. Jean Marie?
Yeah, the ripple. Yeah, I think that to me, it's like a question that I often ask, like, what if your competency was the least attractive thing about you? And that's like just to wonder, like it doesn't have to even be an answer to that, but just like to wonder about that, to wonder into that, like what else could be exciting, interesting for other people. Have you even wondered? We get so used to in a high performance mindset, like I am what I do, and commoditize ourselves fairly quickly, which usually leads to commoditizing other people, which, to Leila's point, the ripple. So what would it look like to ask a different question?
Thank you. What comes to my mind is there's like both elements of a solitary thing and a communal piece of it. Like, to know myself, for me, that requires a lot of time by myself and in stillness, whether that's journaling or nature, and the communal piece of all of the therapists and coaches and 12-step groups and that I have been a part of that have helped me to just like find my center or come to that the recovering high performer. I don't know if I could have just done it all by myself, and I couldn't have just done it with other people because I needed to do the work also. So the synergy, I think, of both of those things. Thank you so much, Leila and Jean Marie. It has been a joy to talk with both of you, and thank you for your impact in the world and how you serve and love people. Because Leila, to your point, when we serve leaders, there is especially that impact. And so thank you both for what you do to serve leaders and the ripple effect that is in the world.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda.
As Jean Marie reminded us, the real question isn't how competent we can become, but what remains when competence is no longer the most interesting thing about us. And as Leila shared, when leaders do this work, learning to slow down, to listen, to regulate, the ripple effects reach far beyond themselves. Thank you for joining this episode of On Coaching. For more conversations at the intersection of neuroscience, performance, and transformation, subscribe and share this episode with the leaders in your life who are ready to go beyond high performance.